drink his wine, sleep with the slave women, and insult his son, and they have been doing it for years. This is a genuine horror, and modern readers underestimate it because we don't feel Xenia in our bones. These men are guests who have inverted the sacred law. The host feeds the guest. These guests are devouring the host. In this world, that is not rudeness. It's sacrilege. And Penelope has held them off, alone, for years, with nothing but her mind. Her masterpiece is the shroud. She announced she would choose a husband as soon as she finished weaving a burial shroud for her father-in-law Laertes, a duty no one could refuse her. And she wove all day, and every night, by torchlight, she unpicked what she had woven. 3 years. 3 years she ran that con, and it only failed because one of the maids informed on her. Understand what that is. Odysseus is famous for a wooden horse. Penelope pulled off a 3-year deception in her own house, surrounded by enemies, with no weapons and no allies. She is not waiting for the hero. She is the other hero. And their son, Telemachus, is now about 20 and has spent his entire life being humiliated in his own home. The first 4 books of the poem are his. Scholars call them the Telemachi, and they're a coming-of-age story. Athena arrives in disguise and tells him to stop moping, call an assembly, stand up in public, and then go looking for news of his father. He sails to Pylos and to Sparta. He meets Nestor, and then Menelaus and Helen, now back in Sparta and married again, serving wine to their guests, both of them behaving as if a war that killed a generation was an unfortunate episode they've agreed not to dwell on. It is one of the most quietly savage scenes in Homer, and Telemachus learns his father may still be alive. Meanwhile, the suitors, realizing the boy is becoming a threat, put an ambush in the strait to kill him on the way home. Odysseus wakes on a beach and doesn't recognize it. Athena has covered it in mist. He assumes the Phaeacians have dumped him somewhere and starts counting his treasure to see if they robbed him, which tells you everything about his instinctive faith in humanity. Then Athena appears and clears the mist, and he kisses the ground. And their conversation afterward is my favorite thing in the poem. She approaches him disguised. He immediately lies to her, spins an elaborate false biography about being a Cretan fugitive who killed a man, just reflexively out of habit to a stranger for no reason. And Athena drops the disguise and laughs. She touches his cheek and says, more or less, "You are unbelievable. Anyone else would run to his wife and children. You want to test them first, and you're still trying to outlie me, and I am the goddess of cunning. The gods love him because he's the same as them. That's the joke. Athena isn't protecting a good man. She's protecting a professional colleague, so they plan. She disguises him, genuinely transforms him, into an old beggar, bald, wrinkled, skin like leather, filthy rags. And he goes, first, not to the palace, but to a pig farm. Eumaeus the swineherd, a slave, kidnapped as a child, sold, and now the loyal keeper of pigs for a master who's been gone 20 years, still keeping the accounts straight, still hoping. He takes the beggar in, feeds him from his own small store, kills a pig for him, and gives him his own cloak to sleep in. A slave giving hospitality that 100 noblemen in the big house are incapable of. Homer, at moments, breaks his own narration to address Eumaeus directly. And then you said, Eumaeus, swineherd. He does that for almost no one. The poet loves this man. Telemachus, dodging the ambush, comes to the hut first. And there, in a pig farmer's shack, Athena strips the disguise, and a father and son see each other for the first time as adults. Telemachus thinks it's a god and is afraid. Odysseus says, I'm not a god. I'm your father, the one you've been crying about. And they weep, the poem says, like birds, like eagles, whose chicks have been taken by farmers before they could fly. Then they plan the killing. And Odysseus walks into his own house as a beggar and endures. A suitor throws a footstool at him. He's mocked, tripped, called a parasite. He takes it all. The man who couldn't stay silent in front of the Cyclops now absorbs insult after insult in his own dining hall, because now, finally, the stakes are big enough to hold his tongue. And by the gate, on a heap of dung, is a dog, Argos. Odysseus raised him as a puppy and left for Troy before he could hunt with him. Now he's 20 years old, riddled with ticks, ignored, lying in the manure because no one's bothered with him since the master left. And he lifts his head. And he knows him. He can't get up. He drops his ears and wags his tail. And Odysseus turns his face away and wipes away a tear so that Eumaeus won't see it, and says something casual about what a fine dog he must have been once. And the dog dies, right there, in the same sentence in which he saw his master after 20 years. 3,000 years, and that's still the most efficient piece of emotional writing in the Western canon. 10 lines, a dog on a dung heap. Then, that night, an old nurse called Eurycleia is told to wash the beggar's feet. She's the woman who nursed Odysseus as an infant. She takes his foot in her hands in the firelight, and her thumb finds a long, old scar above the knee. The boar, the mountain. 50 years ago. She drops the foot, the basin overturns. She opens her mouth to shout, and his hand is on her throat, and he tells her, quietly, that if she says one word, he'll kill her when he kills the others, nurse or not. There is no scene in ancient literature better than that one. The tenderness and the violence in the same gesture. That's the whole man. The next day, Penelope, who may or may not suspect, and scholars have argued about this for a century, and I lean toward she knows or half knows and is testing, announces a contest. She brings out her husband's old bow, a great war bow that has hung unstrung for 20 years. The rules: string it and shoot an arrow through the sockets of 12 axe heads set up in a line. Whoever does it, she marries. The suitors line up. They cannot even bend it. They grease it with fat and warm it at the fire and heave at it one after another, and the best of them can't string it. And the beggar asks if he might try. They laugh, of course. They jeer. And Telemachus, who's grown up a great deal in 24 books, orders it handed over. And Odysseus turns the bow in his hands, checking for worm damage, taking his time. And Homer gives us this comparison, like a musician stringing a lyre, easily, with one motion. He strings it, and he plucks the string and it sings like a swallow. And the room goes silent, because everyone in it has just understood simultaneously exactly what is standing in the doorway. Then he shoots, straight through all 12 axe heads. And he looks at his son and says, "The feast's still going. Time for a little music." And he steps onto the threshold and dumps the arrows out at his feet and says, "That contest is over. Now for another target." And he shoots the leader of the suitors through the throat while he's lifting a cup of wine. What follows is not glorious, and Homer does not pretend it is. 4 men, Odysseus, Telemachus, Eumaeus, and a cowherd, against over 100 in a closed hall whose doors have been locked and whose weapons Telemachus has quietly removed the night before. Athena is there, but she holds back deliberately, making them earn it. It takes a long time. The floor is described as running with blood, the tables overturned, men crawling under furniture, one suitor begging on his knees and offering to pay everything back, a priest pleading, a bard spared because Telemachus speaks for him. At the end, Odysseus stands in a room of 100 dead men, and Homer gives him a simile, like a lion that has been feeding on an ox, its chest and cheeks smeared with blood, terrible to look at. The lion is not a compliment here. And then there is the part I will not soften, because you should know it. 12 of the household's slave women had slept with the suitors. Some were coerced. The text is not remotely interested in the distinction. They are made to carry out the corpses and scrub the blood from the floor first, and then they are hanged. Homer compares them, as they die, to thrushes caught in a net. I tell you this because there's a temptation to present this as a clean story about a good man coming home, and it isn't. It's a Bronze Age story about a lord repossessing his property, and the poem's own moral universe is not ours. That's not a reason to discard it. It's a reason to read it honestly. The greatness of the Odyssey is not that it's comfortable. It's that it's true. about longing, about lying, about what people do to get home. And part of that truth is ugly. And now the best scene in the poem. Penelope is brought down. Euryclea is ecstatic. Your husband is home. The suitors are dead. And Penelope refuses to believe it. She comes down and sits across the fire from him and says nothing. Her son is furious with her, calls her heart harder than stone. Odysseus is covered in gore. She looks at him and says, "If he really is my husband, we know things no one else knows. We'll manage." And then she runs her test, and it is exactly the kind of test her husband would run. She turns to the nurse and says, casually, "Euryclea, move the bed out of the bedroom and make it up for him out here." And Odysseus explodes, because that bed cannot be moved. He built it himself. There was an olive tree growing in the courtyard